All right, Jennifer, you can go ahead and take it away.
I'm so glad I already unmuted myself because I don't know how to do that with all this stuff on my screen. So thank you. Welcome, everyone. Hold on. So thank you for inviting me to do a FAFSA information. So today what I'm going to do is actually there's a lot of new things that are happening for the FAFSA with the new what we call FAFSA simplification. I know I shared some of that information on the information. There's that sheet that I complete to have the information. We have information posted on our website, FAFSA simplification. There's on the main website and then also on our financial aid page. We also have it there. Um, what I'm going to do today is I plan to go through the FAFSA. The FAFSA is very different, and I'll explain to you where the differences are. So it is actually easier, but easy doesn't mean you can't read. You still need to read to make it easier. So that's something. But before we get started, what I wanted to do is we have a new person that works in our office, Ku'ule Pereira. She started with us last week, Monday. So I don't know if you remember, but we used to have many years ago, she used to work in our office. She was our lead financial aid student. So she went off to UH Manoa to work for a few years, and we're so glad to have her back. So she has a lot of experience. She's wanted to come back to work at Kapiolani, and we're happy to have her because she's familiar with who we are and what we do in regards to financial aid and in regards to Kapiolani. So on this first slide on the screen this is our office. We're comprised. Now, we do have a student assistant, Angie. She sits at our window for the spring semester. She is an NMA major. So she sits at our desk Monday, Wednesday, and Friday this semester. This is our emails and our contacts, our telephone numbers, extensions. So if you want to ask us how to get us, I can share this presentation so you don't have to write everything feverishly. Okay. So 24-25 FAFSA. So we call that the better FAFSA, better future. Ha 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 ha. It is great. But we're going to be at the end, we will be talking about some of the snafus that are currently happening on that. So some of the things that are changing or that have changed. Okay, people are used to hearing the word FSAID. Well, they're changing the term to call a studentaid.gov account or a username and password. So those terms are going to be used interchangeably. It is not your KCC banner username, your hawaii.edu username. It is something that the student and the families need to create. So that's one of the changes. It's called a username password, studentaid.gov account, formerly FSAID. Now, once upon a time, we used to have what we call an expected family contribution. So FAFSAs, after you file a FAFSA, students will get the result, families, called EFC, or expected family contribution. Starting the 24-25 year, no longer did away with the expected family contribution. It is now called a student aid index. And the lowest number it can be is a negative $1,500 on up. Whereas in the past, you could have a zero EFC. You could never have anything lower than a zero. Now you can have a negative up to a negative 1,500. Okay. So unfortunately for those poor people, who are poorer than poor, we're going to make them feel so good about them by giving them a negative number for us to assist in determining financial aid eligibility. I think this is horrible that they did this. The other thing is what we call students used to refer to the results of the FAFSA as a student aid report. We are no longer calling it that. It is now called a FAFSA submission summary. So all of these acronyms, we're going to be using SAI instead of EFC. We're going to be using FSS as opposed to SAR. Okay. So bear with us as we also are toggling in two different academic years, 23-24 and 24-25. FTI is now called the Federal Tax Information. What is that? We are getting information directly from the federal tax. tax people. It is different than what we call IRS data retrieval. So in the past, students and families can sign up and do an IRS data retrieval where they would be obtaining information from the IRS. Well, they added more securities on. Now it's called the Federal Tax Information, FTI. A lot more restrictions that came about that when that occurred. You do not see those restrictions. My office sees those restrictions. Okay. Another thing is we used to look at family size. Okay. You have 5 in the family, 2 in college. We never used to ask you all that. What it's doing now, it's asking a question. Do you know your tax exemptions? Are those tax exemptions the same number of people in your family? Okay, so very different terminologies. The families don't need it. New students, fine. They don't know what this all means. It's our continuing students that are on FAFSA right now. And if you've gone through this cycle more than once, these are the things that are going to be different. So students will need to read, okay? Other things is a thing that we call consent and approve. Students and a parent, maybe 2, maybe even your spouse, you will need to give consent and approval for your FAFSA. What does that mean? That means you consent and you approve that we can go into the federal tax information and obtain your federal tax information. Okay. If a student or parent, or if any of what we call a contributor are required to do this, if any of them say no, if they do not give consent and approval, they are not eligible for federal financial aid. Their FAFSA will not be processed. We will not be able to do anything on their financial aid application, which include giving them an offer. Now, we do have paper FAFSAs. Families can now download the paper FAFSA and mail it directly to the government. That isn't happening yet. That won't happen until they release information to us, and we'll talk about that at the end of this presentation. Now we have definitions of what we call a role and contributors. So the role is normally will be the student or the applicant who completes the FAFSA. So we're going to have a role of a student. The role could also be a spouse, possibly, but usually the role is a student and the parent. What does that mean? The student and or the parent can start a FAFSA. But they cannot be in the FAFSA at the same time because they're going to have different sections, okay? So they're required, all of these people are required to give data and provide approval and consent. Now, contributor. So the word contributor, what does that mean? A contributor is a person when you're completing a FAFSA, if we require you to include financial information, you're considered a contributor. So a student is a contributor because whenever a student completes a FAFSA, you're required to report income information. It's irregardless if you earned anything, you're still required to report 0 income. If your parent, if you're considered a dependent student, the parent is also a contributor because you're dependent. We're going to expect your family, your parents, to contribute to the FAFSA to get federal information. Okay, federal tax information. Now, mind you, it's irregardless if they filed a federal tax return or earn money, they are considered contributors and they will need to get a student account and they will need to approve and consent before a FAFSA can be completed. So these are very, very important. So contributors are people who, and I have a slide in there that will kind of break you down to what contributor and who needs to do what. Now, the first thing that we do is who needs an FSA ID? Who needs a studentaid.gov account? So a student will always need a student government, an account, a username and ID, okay? If the student is married and for the year in question that we're asking for income information, so for 24-25, that is 2022, if the student is married and the student filed joint tax return, only the student, we need an FSA ID to complete the FAFSA. If the student is married And in 2022, they did not file a tax return, a joint tax return. The student and the spouse will be considered, they both were going to need a student aid account. Okay. So we're looking at, did you file taxes? Did you guys file joint in the year 2022? Well, maybe they got married in 2023. Well, guess what? That student and that student spouse needs a student account. Okay. Next thing, parents. So let's say the student is a dependent. Okay. So a parent is going to need them. We're going to ask the same question. Are the parents married? Yes, they're married. Did the parents file a joint tax return for 2022? Yes. Good. I only need one parent. We go down. Are the parents married? Yes. Did they file separate tax return? Yes, they filed separate. I'm going to need mom to have one and dad to have one. Different IDs. So this can get a little complicated. Are your parents divorced and living together or not living together? Then we're going to go down to dependency. What parent do we use? So we do this and to assist us in determining who needs a student aid account. And there's a little picture for parents who needs a FSA ID, who needs a student account. Okay, I don't know, I guess I'll give it to Logan, this PowerPoint so that you guys can have this. And if you guys had wanted to, print this, so if you're working with students who are doing FAFSAs, this can assist families in determining who needs to be a contributor and who needs a student account ID. Okay, so how do we create an FSA ID account, a federal student aid account? So I'm going to quickly go through this. One of the things that we need to do, and it's really easy, you just go on studentaid.gov, click the create account. Now, mind you, if a student already has an account and FSA ID, they're good. They just need to remember their password and all of that kind of stuff, which is easy enough to get. So they just get started. One of the key things in this, so once upon a time, you had to have a social security number to be able to get an FSA ID. Okay, you no longer are required. So if a parent, and usually it's the parent, does not have a social security number, we get often a lot of students whose parents are, let's say, from the Philippines or from another country, and they don't have a social, or even the Pacific Islands, maybe they don't have a social security number. Okay, which means they could never file FAFSA online because they could never get an FSA ID to electronically sign their FAFSAs. Now they can. Okay, so as they're doing, trying to create an FSA ID, they would check the box. I don't have a social security number. There's going to be some changes. There are going to be some questions. It does take a little bit longer for them to verify that you are who you are. I think they're working with TransUnion Credit Bureau to try to confirm that of their identity. So they're going to need documentation like, I don't know, maybe a utility bill or something if they have something to assist them in identifying. So before you couldn't even do this. So now this is helpful because now families are able to electronically file the FAFSA. It makes it easier for them because they didn't have a social security number. Now that's not going to be an issue. Okay, so it's pretty easy to create an FSA ID. It takes time. It's easy. I didn't say it was fast. Okay, it's easy. It's not fast because there's a lot of questions that families will need to complete. One of the things that we do highly recommend students and whoever's creating an FSA ID or a student aid account is to confirm their email. So number one, you cannot have duplicate emails. It can only be one email attached to one person. Okay, so that's pretty important because we have a lot of families who are sharing emails. Yeah, no, mom got to have a separate email from student. Okay, has to be separate emails. Okay, so we recommend submitting emails, and we also recommend if you have a cell phone to input your cell phone. Okay, so those are things that we really request families to do, only because it makes life easy. I mean, it makes life really easy, and they're going to verify, yeah, your information. So this is for account recovery. So if you have an email or you have your telephone number, they can do easy account recoveries if this information is verified. So that is done during the creation of the student aid account or the FSA ID. Yeah. Yeah. One thing families need to do, this is how they're going to verify your phone number and your email. You're going to have to put in the codes in there. So you guys are all familiar with those types of security issues. Now, when a person creates an FSA ID, it does take a while to verify. So if a student or a parent is wanting to complete the FAFSA, they need to get an FSA ID first and foremost. It's going to take a few days before they can actually verify and utilize their FSA ID. And so we've been going to the high schools already. I've been doing workshops December, January, and the biggest issue that I had when we're doing completion workshops, those who completed their FSA ID couldn't do anything because they were creating it there. They had to wait. I had people who created an FSA ID 2 days before they came to the workshop. They couldn't do complete their FAFSAs because they needed that to be verified. So that is important. But those who completed their FSA ID were done doing their FAFSAs within 30 to 45 minutes. Okay, so it is fast. Okay, so now here we're going to see some changes. So for completing the FAFSA, okay, so it's really easy. So what you want to look at is currently, just to let you know, if you guys are working with students now that are enrolled this spring semester and have not filed their FAFSA yet, we are still accepting FAFSAs, but they will need to complete the 23-24 FAFSA. Okay? Anyone starting classes for the fall who wants aid for the fall 24, they need to complete the 24-25 FAFSA. And that's where the big changes are right now. Okay, so they'll need to complete that. They log in very easy with their FSA ID. So remember when I talked about roles? So when we're doing a role, they're going to select, am I the student or am I the FAFSA? Okay, excuse me, the parent, student or parent. We highly recommend students to complete it, to start the completion process. Now, mind you, this is a brand new application. So students who have a 23-24 FAFSA, they have a 23-24 FAFSA. Usually, once upon a time, you can renew your FAFSA. Everything will be pre-populated. This is a brand new application. So students have to start from the beginning. Okay, as they complete their FAFSA. So they're typing everything in like a brand new application. Now, the application is very user-friendly. There's a lot of words. There's a lot of videos that will assist families in giving what a FAFSA overview is. So families are able to review this and see, okay, this is how long it's going to take. And look at this one, understand your FAFSA, one of 4. So there's 4 different little tiny videos that you can go through. FAFSA is easier. Doesn't mean it's going to take faster. It's easier, okay? Because they're going step by step. So families will need to read each of the steps that they're doing. So this one will tell them about the contributors, information documents that are needed for the FAFSA, how long it's going to take, what time it's going to take. So they're saying an hour. We've been completing FAFSAs at workshops within an hour, less than an hour. There's 2 parts of a FAFSA. We are able to do 2 parts of a FAFSA within an hour. Okay. So after submitting the FAFSA, it tells you what it's going to do. And we'll talk more about this at the end of this presentation. So FAFSA, they do the FAFSA, they give us personal information. Student has to type all this out. Okay. They really have to type. Now they're going to be providing consent. Okay. So this is important. Students need to provide consent or be ineligible for federal student aid. If they do not provide consent, they do not get financial aid, considered for financial aid with us. Okay, so this kind of like tells them, so very important. And essentially what they're saying, if I provide consent, I provide consent for federal tax information to get that from the US Treasury's office. So essentially that's what it is. So that's a very big thing. So here we go, personal circumstances. Now, as you can see on the very top here, these are the sections of the FAFSA. There's 5 sections of the FAFSA. Okay, so the first section is personal circumstances. Very easy, very short. People don't know about it, but I want to share it with you because it's very different. It is shorter than an old FAFSA if you've ever done a FAFSA before. So we're going to go marital status, easy enough. College level, easy enough. We're going to talk about what we call personal circumstances, other circumstances, unusual circumstances. A lot of these terminologies are changing. You guys don't know it. We in the financial aid office do know it, but I want to share with you because you can assist us when we get into students who have challenges during this section. Okay, so the personal circumstances, these are the questions that will assist us in determining if a student is dependent or independent. What does that mean? I need dependent, I need parent information, or independent. I'm only looking at you, the student. Okay, so in this section, if they checked any of these circumstances pertain to them, essentially you're considered an independent student. Okay, so you can see you're a veteran in the armed forces, if you have children, if you're ward of the court, certain things, foster care and all that. But if not, you just hit none of these. Okay, then they're going to ask other circumstances. Okay, so we do know that we have students who may say no to all of those, none of those pertain to them, but maybe they're an unaccompanied youth who's homeless or self-supported and at risk of being homeless. Okay, if they answer yes to that, they can answer, then we won't consider them. They will need to do follow-ups with us. So if you have families who are like that, students who are like that, if they answer yes, I would highly recommend that you send them to our office immediately. And the reason is because maybe they fit in a different situation. Okay, so we need to kind of clear these things out. This is a horrible question because it's horrible the way that we have to confirm this. So we don't have that many, but we do come across some of them. Now, unusual circumstances. Okay, so I don't know if you're familiar with the term dependency override. So financial aid people, we always had the option of determining what we call dependency override. And what is that? That is when we come across a student who was not able to complete their FAFSA. They say no, they're dependent, but there's something happening in their family that they are not able to get their parent information. Okay, that's what we call dependency over. What are those circumstances? Maybe they're coming in from an abusive relationship. Maybe they've been denied from grandma and grandpa, right? Never had with their parents. They consider grandma and grandpa their parents, but legally they're not their parents, right? It could be a situation like that. Well, we're not supposed to be getting the grandparents' information unless they've been legally adopted. Oftentimes that's not the case. So in those cases, those are what we call unusual circumstances. So in our office, we do have a process for that. In fact, it's on our website. We have a process on our website called unusual circumstances. We have a little thing on our website where students can click there, and it takes them through the process of what we need to do so that we can assist the students in determining if an unusual circumstance exists, in which case we could potentially do what we call a dependency override. This is important because you guys are seeing the students way more than we are as counselors, as working with students one-on-one. Whenever we come into circumstances like this, students almost always, well, actually always, we're going to have to have a third-party documentation supporting of what their situation is. So we've worked with a few of you long time ago. We usually work with students coming straight from high school. So we work with our high school counselors in getting documentation to support that these unusual, exceptional circumstances are affecting this family. Because, in other words, we shouldn't be going to your parents because something unusual happened in your family. Okay, so we will only know them if someone brings that to our attention. And I'm going to tell you something about this. This is a tough decision for a student to even do, because the shame factor comes into play. Who the heck, nobody tells us this kind of stuff. We come across students like this accidentally. Yeah, because they shame, they don't tell us, right? So if you come across a student like that, hand them off to us. And I mean physically hand them off to us, because it's a situation, it's such a touchy situation for a lot of people, that they shame to come. Okay, what are some examples to show you an example that we have? We've worked with families whose parents have shunned them because they're homosexual, right? We've assisted in abusive relationships. Can we really have the student go to the family, or get hurt doing those? So we're talking about pretty tough situations that have happened. Shame factor kind of stuff that nobody is going to bring you out to do that. So if you come across that and you see them struggling for aid, you can ask them or send them to us, and then we can ask them about their situation. Okay, so the next thing, so those are the tough parts for families, for students, to be able to do. Now, once they finish the personal circumstance, it'll tell us dependency statuses. Now, even you can go through that whole thing, and you have a good relationship with your parents. You're actually living with your parents and all that. But guess what? Your parents are unwilling to complete their FAFSA to give you the information. Yes, we've come across quite a few of those every year. Okay, the student will still have to file the FAFSA to complete the FAFSA, because there's other things that we need to check that the FAFSA checks for us. But if a parent is unwilling, the only alternative for financial aid, federal assistance, would be an unsubsidized loan for the student. In which case, so there is that process, and we have a handful of those students every year, okay, whose parents are unwilling to complete the FAFSA for whatever reasons. Students are only eligible for unsubsidized, but they do have to go through this process. They have to identify themselves. The good thing is FAFSA is now allowing them to identify themselves. Okay, before they couldn't, they had to come to us so that we can talk to them about that. Okay, now a true freshman, a true student who is dependent, that really, when they see this question, okay, we get a lot of students who are answering yes to that question because they don't understand the question. If they answer yes, that means I'm going to ask your parents information, and the only aid I can give you is an unsubsidized loan. Okay, so we just caution families, if you're working with a student, people don't read. Okay, and then if you read this question, it could be confusing if you're not familiar with, being an adult and answering these kind of things. Yeah. So we just ask that families, that if you're dealing, it's easy. FAFSA is easy, but you gotta read. I didn't say it was faster. I said it was easier. Okay, gotta read. Okay, and then we're gonna ask about the parents. Okay, so when we ask about the parents, let's say, yeah, we're gonna provide parent information. We're gonna ask the questions. Remember that thing I told you about parents? Are they married to each other? Yeah. So we're asking all those questions. What is the student doing at this time? The student is going to provide information about their parent, and their parent is going to be sent a separate email. They're going to be invited to complete the FAFSA. Okay. Once upon a time, the student and the parent can be in there at the same time, complete the FAFSA in one sitting. No can. Okay. The student completes it. They will send an invitation to the parent, and then the parent completes their section under their own FSA ID, studentaid.gov account number. Okay, so that's why the beginning part of this, I kind of went pretty quick, in detail on it, because really that's what it is. So the student will complete this part of their FAFSA. Okay. The rest is demographic information, FYI. The census information is optional. If they don't want to answer, they have to answer. Prefer not to answer. Okay. Citizenship question is required. Okay. they know high school information. So that is the demographic part, number 3 of the FAFSA for students going through. Yeah. Then we get into the financials. Okay. The student is, you said FTI, they're going to ask a lot of, before we used to have a whole slew of questions. The question is really not that many questions that will be asked. So pretty much it's kind of fast. Okay. Then students go and put in their colleges pretty quickly. Then they're going to ask them to review it, to sign it. Okay. It's letting you know we invited all of these people to complete your FAFSA, and you're going to be done. The student is done with their section of the FAFSA. Okay. But their FAFSA is not done if they're required to put parent information. Next thing happens is the parent will get an invitation email to complete the FAFSA. So it'll come into their email, help complete student's first name's FAFSA form. See that little login? Okay. Click that login and they are able to do their student's FAFSA, the parent section of the FAFSA. Okay. So 2 separate logins. Student has to do their own. Parent has to log in and do their own. Depending on how many contributors on the FAFSA will depend on how many times people will actually be logging in to do the FAFSA. Okay, so it's very similar to the student. They're going to have, like I said, easy, a lot of words. Easy doesn't mean you can't read. You still need to read. It does make it a little bit easier. They're going through the same process that the student went through. Kind of reminds them this is what to expect. This is what's going to happen. Okay. Once you're in there, because they clicked the link and they logged in, they're going to make certain that you're you because the student put this in on their FAFSA. Okay. Same information. The parent has to provide consent, or the student will not be eligible for federal student aid. Okay. If the parent declines, they can't do anything. Yeah. So that's why it's so important for them to do that. Now, you see 3 sections for the parent, much shorter. They do marital status and legal state of residence in section 1. Okay. Section 2, they're going to ask about their financials, federal benefits, tax filing status, family size. Okay. Very short. This is what they're going to ask for family size. How many people did you, in your exemptions, number of people claimed on your 2022 tax return? Is the family size different from that number? If it's not, you answer no, move on. If it is, if you don't remember, you better answer yes. And then put how many people are in your family. The parent is doing this now, yeah, to do that section. Then they're going to talk about the tax return information. Because they provided consent, the information that is requested is very short, very short. These are the questions that we ask on the FAFSA. So you can see it's much easier. Based on your 22 tax return, okay, did the parent receive earned income tax credit? Okay. Next question, did the parent have paid taxes on scholarships? So maybe the parent was a financial aid recipient. They filed taxes on there. We need to know how much. And foreign income exclusion. So very simple. Okay. If you don't know what it is, guess what the answer probably is? 0. Okay. Next question we always ask. If it asks about assets, we're going to ask annual child support received. And the annual child support received is for the latest complete calendar year. Yeah. So that's what they're looking for. Assets as of the date. Okay. I'm not going to go through what assets are, what assets are not. Okay. And then the parent is done pretty much. Okay. So the key section on these, and what will happen is the parent will get an email and all that. The key sections about the new FAFSA is if the student is required to do parent data, they are separately having to log in. 2 separate sessions. If there's more than 2 contributors, however many contributors you need, that's how many times that individual person will be logging in. Okay, so that's very different than what has been in the past. So that's something to know. So Here's some changes, just to review these changes. Okay. Talked about FSA ID, about the student aid account, student aid index. Okay. FAFSA submission. Now, FYI, some scholarships require the student aid report. I don't know what they're going to do because they're not going to get their FAFSA submission summary. We don't know when those are going to be sent out to students yet. Okay. FTI, instead of IRS data retriever, we're using FTI, family size. So those are just things. The key is consent and approve. The student and any contributors must consent or approve, or they will not be eligible for aid. Any questions on the FAFSA completion? So pretty simple. I don't know if anybody, if you haven't, I've done this. I've done this for myself, and I questioned it because it was so fast and easy. Now, remember, I'm a financial aid person. Okay. I do complete a FAFSA every single year. Okay. I don't like to tell people what to do if I never did it myself. I've done it. My son is also in college, so I did it as a parent also. And all of those came out. I got my email and I got the email. I logged in, I logged out, I logged back in. I was able to do everything. It is much faster, easier. I did have to read, but man, it seemed too easy for me. So if you see people are saying that's easy, it's kind of easy. Right now, there's a lot of glitches. We'll go through that. But okay. Okay. Now we're looking at FAFSA updates. Okay. So last week, we got notice from the federal government. Well, first of all, we were supposed to start receiving FAFSA information for students in February, beginning of February. Well, it's beginning of February. Last week we received notice from the government that they are not going to be sending that FAFSA information to the schools until sometime during the first half of March. So crossing fingers, okay? The question is, because of that, what can our students do? There's a lot of things that students can do now as we wait to determine when can we give students financial aid, what kind of eligibility they may have. Okay, so one of the things that we can do to help our students can complete the FAFSA, have them complete the FAFSA. I will tell you, once we start receiving information, we will, notify the student, pay attention to your @hawaii.edu email. Once we are able to get the FAFSA information and start working on it, we will email students through hawaii.edu email to let them know, number one, we received your FAFSA. And then number two, if we need additional information. Okay, so we don't know when that is going to happen. Okay, but so they need to pay attention to that. Once we know what's up, when we're going to do, we'll try to remember to post an announcement about that so that we can start and letting people know, okay, we're starting to move on doing those things. So that's something that students can do right now. File the FAFSA because they may have problems while they're filing the FAFSA. That way it gives them time to file and get through those loopholes. Now we have priority application dates, which is March 1st. So now's a good time. Just because FAFSA stuff are being delayed, we're fortunate. Our priority application date is March 1st. So we still want students to get in there because we are having students who are having problems. Okay, filing the FAFSA. I just had 2 that came to our counter. They're having problems filing the FAFSA. We try to troubleshoot with them. There's a lot of things that we cannot do, and they have to report it. I even tried reporting FAFSA errors directly myself, and I got this email back saying, oh, tell the student to do this. So I had to go tell the parent. I was working with a parent to do it. They had to do the email. Well, 2 days later, what do I get? Apparently, other families are also having similar problems. So we're getting these updates, notifications from the Fed saying, okay, these are outstanding issues. They just added a whole bunch more issues on it. It was in January 4th, they had maybe 6. Some of them were resolved. They just updated it last week. another 6 came on. So there are issues that are happening with the FAFSA right now. We won't know those issues until students come across them. If they're having problems, we can try to assist them. I don't know. We have resources to try to assist them. But have them do it now, because if they come into problems, we still have time to be able to hopefully work with them to get through those problems. Okay. The next biggest thing after they file their FAFSA and monitoring their emails is really maintaining financial aid satisfactory academic progress. What does that mean? Doing well this semester, making sure that they're continuing and doing well in school. Because at the end of the spring semester, we will do our annual SAP. And, you know, that's another issue. That's another workshop alone, looking at satisfactory academic progress. Okay. So why are there delays? Okay. It is a new application process. Okay. For the federal government, it is a new application process. The FAFSA was supposed to be out on October 1st. They said by the end of December. December came, then they said, oh, we're going to soft launch it. I think we're still in a soft launch and we're in February. So there's a lot of issues that are changing. One of the biggest issues that I think is a really good issue is correcting the student aid index formula. So I'm not going to bother you with anything that you need to know, because I know all the details of this, but for the last 2 years, the formulas were incorrect. Okay. I think it was cost of living allowances, it was incorrect. Okay. They knew about it, but they were still going to roll out this new process. Okay. So fortunately, financial aid community fought back, and I think we won, because that's one of the delays, that you're going to correct this formula. What does that mean? That means our students are going to be, hopefully there's going to be more people eligible for the Pell Grant. That's what we're looking at. Once we are able to obtain the FAFSA information, we're going to have more delays, because our banner system has to be upgraded and tested. Okay. So mind you, it's coming out in these, there's so many changes happening with the FAFSA. Okay. We've been status quo for so many years. Okay. But there's a lot of technical changes that are happening that our Illusion banner people, they haven't received all the final things yet to upgrade. So we're working on the upgrades. Illusion is working on upgrades. Our UH system banner team, they're working on those upgrades too. We can't test anything because we have no FAFSAs. Okay. So that makes it even more challenging. So those are the things. That's why we're having a lot of the delays. So when do we expect to award students? We do rely on the UHCC Financial Aid Office, to complete our processes. Okay, we do. Okay. So my crystal ball says, I'm hoping that we are able to award students the same timeline that we did last year, which was also delayed. If we can keep to that timeline, and that's all going to be hoping and praying that all of our systems work and all that, that would be about the same time that we do our annual SAP, which would be like the end of May, early June. So if we're lucky. So my glass is always half full. Right now, I look like that person looking at my crystal ball saying, oh my gosh. So I'm going to stop sharing. Any questions?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jennifer.
Okay, so Kathy, so I'm going to get to that question, priority deadline. It's a priority date. I never said deadline. I said date. We never really use a priority date as a deadline. What the dates are used for really is because we look at, okay, how many people, so we kind of put them in tiers, to see before we run out of money. So FYI, traditionally, we had a March 1st filing of your FAFSA deadline. But if you may have filed it, but you never completed your application, we look at a combination of the application priority date and when you completed your FAFSA, if we needed additional information. And we do look at it in tiers because we do need to put a priority for all the monies that we have. Traditionally, we've been, traditionally it hasn't been set. So, but you talk about priority, I'll talk about a priority deadline. Okay. So we just had a discussion regarding the common application. Okay. There's about 100 or more scholarships within the common application that requires the FAFSA. Okay. We're not going to delay that. Okay. It's not going to delay that process for the FAFSA, for the common application. It really means nothing. Right now, as I see it, it means nothing. The application date means nothing. And I'll tell you why. Because traditionally, our students are filing late anyways. Traditionally, they've been filing late anyways. So this might be right on target. Other people who used to do it in October and forget, they don't remember till, they're remembering now. So that's good. Traditionally, the new students who do file early, they don't come to us. It's the later students that file that come to us. Our continuing students, they're pretty good at filing within appropriate timeframes. Yeah. So as a system, they are discussing any type of extension of deadlines or priority dates. There's no need to extend the deadline because the students can file. Yeah.
I just have thanks, Jen. I have another question regarding work study. I don't know if I saw anything in there about students actually asking if they'll be eligible for work study or applying for work study.
Nope, because there's no question on that anymore.
So
if they want, then they need to just come to our office and ask us. We have a very small allocation that we have to spend, and there's so many priorities on it. But if you guys know of any student who has work study, that wants work study, let me know. Our allocation is that low. Actually, our system won't allow us to automatically award that. So. Question, Mimi, has there been messaging? I believe there was a message that was sent out by the system regarding the delay. There's not been any updated messaging to students regarding, we just found out last week, yeah, regarding when we're going to be receiving the FAFSA information. But there was a message that went out sometime in January regarding FAFSA timelines prior to us knowing that we ain't gonna get anything till March. Yeah. I'm sorry, everybody. I don't usually what do you call do this kind of presentations. I'm gonna be answering the questions on the chat right now. But hey, you know what? I don't mind talking to people. So you can raise your hand or just butt in, please.
And I can and I can go ahead and turn off the recording too if
Okay.
people would also feel more comfortable. So I'm going to go ahead and do that as well, just for the question and answer time. So let me go